This is Tommy's Outdoors 96, and this episode is a special treat for all you shark anglers out there, especially those of you who target blue sharks, like probably the most common big shark species in waters around, well, Europe. Our guest is Dr. Simon Thomas. Simon is a veteran shark angler, and he's also a scientist who spent substantial portion of his professional career working with the data related to blue shark catches, and so on. But even if you're not shark angler or angler in general, but you're just interested in sharks, shark biology, this episode is also for you, and you will find a lot of very interesting information. So I'm not going to be dragging this introduction any longer. Just before I let you go, just a reminder that if you want to support Tommy's Outdoors podcast and you want to support what I do and help the podcast, the best way to do this is to share it with your friends. Like, send a text message right now or email to a person who you think would enjoy this episode of the podcast. And also retweet the tweet, share the Facebook post, put an Instagram post into your story. You know the drill. Let's get this episode out there, and let's make sure that every shark angler out there hears about it and has an opportunity to hear from Dr. Simon Thomas about shark angling and handling techniques and shark biology and all those things, which ultimately will translate to more catches and also improve shark welfare. So that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, blue sharks and Dr. Simon Thomas. Simon, welcome to Tommy's Outdoors. Thanks for doing this for us.
No problem at all, Tommy.
So blue shark season, when it starts, it's going to be like early July and will go until the late October, maybe? Do you agree?
We see the very first of them in Penzance. They see them probably the second to third week in May. Very first fish. We occasionally see them in Plymouth because we're a bit further east at the end of May, and then it goes on till October. Tends to be once the big storms happen, it tends to get a bit more patchy, and then they sort of retreat westwards again. So Penzance probably sees them to the end of October. I have heard of them in November. It has happened, but it's unusual.
Yeah, I caught one very early November. It's driven by the weather, by the water temperature, really.
Yeah, temperature's part of it. Blue sharks in our waters tend to like stratified water. So in the summer, you get this sort of top bit of water, which is the same temperature. Then you get a thermocline, which goes down to another temperature. And blue sharks in our water like to stay in the top bit. And once the storms make that layer collapse, they tend to go back to where, migrate elsewhere.
Awesome. Listen, I'll jump right into it just for fun. And I feel like we need to publish that episode perhaps like early May, second week of May, when the shark season starts. That's going to be probably perfect. And people who are going to listen and watch that then will tell whether we or I managed to keep that promise. Simon, tell us a few words about yourself, how it started for you, how you get fascinated with blue sharks. What's the story?
Well, I mean, originally I was from the southeast. I did both coarse fishing and sea fishing. A lot of both. I did match fishing. I did a lot of beach fishing, a lot of boat fishing, and I moved down here 18 years ago, something like that. And whilst I was playing around at the university, I had a request from a friend of mine who was a skipper. Still is a skipper, a man called Dave Uren, and he was doing a tagging program as part of the NBA team led by David Sims. And he said, we've never really fished for blue sharks before. Do you fancy coming along? So it was during the time when, I think once we went 23 days without seeing a shark. They were so, at the time, numbers in this country were so low. And to be honest, we made every mistake you could possibly make. I can't tell you the numbers of muck-ups we managed to do. But we learnt. By the end of it, we got pretty good at it. And I've crewed for Dave ever since. I've had my own boats. I've seen over 4,000 blue sharks caught, or caught them myself since then. But the first one I ever saw, that sort of flash of blue, that brightness of them, are extraordinary creatures. And just watching them, I could just watch them in a slick without fishing for them. They absolutely fascinate me. And I sort of realized that we had all these skippers down here, are experts. They're experts at what they do. They've been doing this stuff for years and years. And, as a scientist, I was working on a different discipline. I thought, wow, all this data is going to waste. Why on earth would you waste it? And I think part of the problem is that a lot of scientists treat anglers and skippers as inferior. And, I've got a doctorate, you don't know so much. And in fact, when it comes to angling, as you know, the opposite's completely true.
Yeah.
So, you need to...
and I'm kind of like, I got hooked up on shark angling, maybe similar, that component was of a science and tagging program was there as well. And again, regular listeners to my podcast, they heard all the stories here and there about my shark fishing, but this episode is dedicated to blue sharks. So I'm kind of feel, I give myself leeway. I'm just going to repeat all of that. If there's someone who listens to that, didn't listen to previous episodes. I moved to Ireland like 12, 13 years ago at this stage. And I remember sitting in the kitchen with, I think, Irish Angler magazine. And it was an article about shark fishing, about blue sharks. And I read, I couldn't believe it. Yes, I'm there. And it took me, probably 3 weeks to book a shark fishing trip. And like you said, wow, this massive fish. It's a proper big game fishing that you can do at your doorstep. And then, from one trip to another. And then I was with skipper Luke Aston, and I have an episode with Luke Aston. I don't remember which number is it. And he is he was and he is part of this tagging program. And when you take a measurement, your fork length of the shark, the full length, the girth, you can estimate the weight based on that, and you tag the fish. It was like, whoa, this is so cool. And I literally for 2.5 years went mad. I was doing probably over 10 trips in a season. So if you take season for me, said at the top of the show, lasts from early July till probably end of October. So 10 trips a year is being there at the sea every single weekend, effectively.
Yeah.
So that is whoa, what you're doing, how much does it cost you? And obviously once you go that path, then you don't necessarily want to have a crew of random people. You just select your 2 trusted buddies, so you're sharing your charter instead, usually between 6-8 people. You're sharing that between 2 or 3 because everybody, you need to get a crack at the shark. It was fantastic ride for me, and that aspect of tagging was great. So that's that. I'm thinking that this is similar for you, except you took that 1 or 2 steps further, because then you proceed to actually do some research and gather that data and process them.
Yeah, the Irish has a fantastic tagging program, and in many ways they were an inspiration for what I do. The Irish data feeds directly into ICAT, which then informs their stock models. And angler data is better than commercial data any day of the week. We're motivated to provide good data. You have an effort component of it. You know how long you're going to be fishing for. I've got records for my own boat down to the minute. But even if you say catch per trip, it's still something you can fit into your models very easily. And I realised that we weren't doing it. And through the Shark Angling Club of Great Britain, through their fantastic records, we managed to piece together a time series going back to the 1950s, and with over 100,000 sharks listed, with effort data. And I promised we also got other skippers involved. My promise to them was I would not use the data without their express consent every time. So everything we do, we ask them. I put their names on these scientific papers that we produce, and I would use the data to actually help protect the species. And I didn't go through DEFRA or CFAS, I just submitted it directly to ICAT, much to the annoyance of DEFRA and CFAS. But it was inspired by the Irish program, because the Irish program was excellent.
Wow. I'm glad to hear that, because I heard before opinions that this data is just gathered for data's sake. There's not used for anything and stuff like that. And obviously, as you can imagine, this goes on the heels of discussion. Should we be catching them? And this is it worthy? And leave them alone because the stocks are under pressure and all that. So tell me how from the data that you see, you gather, you process, how does the situation of the blue shark stock specifically looks like? But you if you have any data on other species of sharks, then by all means feel free to.
I mean, it's the way they do their stock assessments, especially with a creature that may be off the coast of Africa in 3 months' time, may not always come here again. I will put a caveat to that. It's very difficult to know what the worldwide stocks are like, but the data we use feeds into the models. But I would say in the southwest of the UK and the Celtic Deeps, there are probably more blue sharks than there ever have been. I mean, the numbers are astronomical. I mean, one of the well-known skippers caught 100 sharks in a day. Can you get your head around that?
Was it like a angling skipper, or was it?
Yeah, he was an angling skipper. Yeah,
100 a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many people on a boat?
Oh, not many. 4. I mean, it was constant. But I've done 53 in a slightly longer day, but most of them were pups. To be honest, most of them were sort of the little rats, we call them.
That was my next thing, that their arms must be sore after.
Yeah. I mean, but I've seen there's also our fishery, and the Irish fishery, if we look at the data, was dominated by female fish. Most of our fish were immature. Blue sharks are quite cunning. They because mating's so brutal, they separate by sex. And there's also, so the male fish have a lower temperature tolerance, so they tend to stay in warmer water. If you go to the coast off America and the Gulf Stream, it's dominated by males. But over here, historically, it's been sort of 90%, 95% females, and probably 90% of them are immature. What we've noticed is, the numbers of sharks have gone very far, far higher than I've ever seen. I mean, one year we averaged, for a lot of trips, we averaged 20 sharks a trip. From Plymouth, and that's over a whole season. There was a lot of small fish, but we also had a lot of very big fish. I would say that the numbers of sharks reaching the UK is very, very high. Now, whether that is due to the stock is doing incredibly well, or whether it's because the fish have moved, you really need to accumulate it with the other data, and that's what ICAT do. They feed it into their computer models. I would say they're definitely not at an all-time low. And there may be a lot of reasons for that. Stocks of other sharks have reduced by up to 70% in the last 50 years. Things like the mako were a major predator on young blue sharks. It's possible the mako decline may have led to an increase in youngsters.
Yeah, I read that, and I think that was specifically about the Shark Angling Club of Britain, that they were these a competition for shark fishing competitions. They were mainly mako, and blue shark were treated like a bycatch. That was like, oh, another blue shark, because they were after mako. Is that what was going on? Mako have been very rare in the UK. I think there's been about 90 ever caught in the UK. Total, like historically as well?
Yeah. Over the year, they're a rare visitor, but the areas where the blue sharks mate, which is thought to be between the Azores and the Grand Banks, the Mako tagging data from the Mako has indicated they're in the same place at the same time. So these big Mako were going there for a reason, and you would imagine it was probably to prey on juvenile blues. I mean, blues produce a lot of pups. I mean, the average blue will produce something like 25 pups a go.
Wow.
Up to 125. So, the blue shark population can recover very quickly. If you compare that to the poor beagle, where it's three pups, and they probably skip a year, your recovery is always going to be slower. But I will say we've seen more, there have been more threshers about than I've ever known. Other sharks were probably, poor beagles are starting to see the numbers creep back up again from a point of virtually not seeing them. On the south coast, on the north coast is very different. They get very, very good numbers of poor beagles. And I know of Ireland, they get some as well.
Yeah, definitely. And listen, is your interest from the scientific standpoint specifically on blue sharks, or are you in general looking at all the species of shark, including poor beagles and threshers and Mako possibly?
My specific interest is blue sharks, and the reason is the data set's so big. I mean, I come from a world of genomics, so I used to analyze DNA. That was my thing. In the ocean, and I like big data sets. To me, I can do a lot of, the more I've never heard anyone, you very rarely hear in science somebody saying you can't get enough data. Now, blue sharks, I've got 100,000 fish to work with. I can get a lot of environmental data. I can tie it in, I can model it. It's an easy shark for me to work on, but the Shark Angling Club of Great Britain have records on other sharks as well. Some of my other contributing skippers have records on other sharks. And whether I get round to it or whether a colleague of mine earns the trust of the anglers and gets round to it, it's there. Yeah, and that's one of the things. I want to make sure that the data's there. It's now all in thanks to John McMasters, who's helped hugely, and other members of the Shark Angling Club. The data's now in digital form.
Yes.
Or it was actually in a book that is holding my computer up at the moment.
and listen, is that what became your job, or are you still doing this as a hobby, as a kind of like a passion?
I just do it for fun. I mean, I don't get paid for this stuff. I'm a consultant at the moment, and I do this stuff because I enjoy doing it. And there's also not having a university or anything else involved makes it easier for me to work with skippers in the way I like. I'm not bound by the same rules. By the way I work, my ethical considerations, I'm not banging a tag into a fish. No, skippers do tag as part of other programs. I mean, I very much like to get the sort of data you talked about, more the length data. I mean, length and age are correlated. I'd like to get the length data. There's a lot you can do with it. It's very valuable. I've got some from various tagging programs. I don't tend to take the sharks out of the water if I can possibly do it. Other skippers do, but there's other data I'd like to get because I've got a purpose for it. And as you say, a lot of people say that, you're just collecting data for data's sake. But the data we collect is for a specific purpose. It fits into my models. I get other data about the health of the stock, and it all feeds into the people who actually set the total allowable catch for the species. So commercially, I mean, for me, it's a win-win. I mean, it's in all our interest to have more sharks around here, and anglers are the only people who can collect this data. There is nobody else who can do this to this standard. If you want to know if a species is threatened, you can leave it alone, but then how do you know it's recovered?
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, anglers are the ones who are actually out there tagging those fish and releasing them back to the water. Nobody else does it. Maybe there are some. I had a few podcasts with people from the program called Sea Monitor, where there is a component of these catching and tagging and stuff like that. But anglers are kind of doing that organically.
Yeah.
At such a, and other thing is that, and you can confirm that or kind of debunk that, really majority of recaptures are really commercial recaptures.
Yeah.
So effectively, majority of fish tagged, once they're recaptured, they're dead.
Mostly. I mean, I have had one of the fish that was captured, had a lure and tagged, was recaptured 3 times by longliners. So they released it. It was a particularly stupid blue shark, but they released it. And I mean, you do get them, any species. I mean, I once caught the same blue shark 3 times in one day.
Oh.
It was a youngster. Literally, we caught it, put it back, it took another bait and let it go, and it came back again. It had a mackerel hook in the corner of its mouth, and the third time I just took the hook out and chugged it away. But yeah, I mean, virtually all of the shark recaptures from the Loo program were long lines.
Yeah, and this is super. This is like, because when you recapture fish, like you said, like one day, it really indicates that fish is not too bothered by being captured. You see that with pike fishing. You kind of can recapture one pike in the time span of 20 minutes. So would that be indicative that really you don't, like the recovery rate is high, or to put the other words, that you're not really causing that much harm to fish if you catch them and then release, provided of course proper handling.
Yep.
And we know if they I let you elaborate that, because I think there's no this is a thing that the more times we repeat that, how to handle shark properly, the better, and especially in this episode where it's dedicated to sharks.
Yeah, I mean, the evidence is, if you do it right, if you handle a blue shark right, you use the right equipment. I mean, circle hooks for me would be would be something, or a hook that hooks in the corner of the mouth. If you gut hook a shark, properly gut hook it, you probably killed it. But the evidence is that if a blue shark is handled properly, the recovery rate is fantastic. It's not, if you mishandle them, the recovery rate can be very bad. That you've seen plenty of blue sharks. They are a skinny fish as a rule. They have no rib cage. Their internal organs are they don't tend to jump a lot, not like a mako, something like that. They're a bit of a sort of long, thin, slightly flabby shark, but they have very little protection in certain areas. So, if you haul a fish by a leader over a gunnel, over a piece of metal at right angles, you could well damage that fish. Whereas, if you release it in the water, or you have a method for getting it through the doors and things like that, the evidence is the recovery rate's great. That's what I'd say. I mean, handling is really, really important. They're not indestructible, because they're sharks. That if you handle them right, brilliant, absolutely fantastic. I mean, part of what we do through the Shark Club and the Sport Angling Club of Great Britain is promote a handling guide, and it goes from all stuff from sort of the tackle you should use up to hooks and that sort of thing, and how you should treat a shark. And it's very, it's an important message. If we mishandle them, and you see some cases on the internet, and you think, oh my, on Facebook and stuff, and you think, oh my God, you are giving ammunition to those who want to ban angling.
Mm-hmm. do you see that? Do you see the rise of that sentiment?
It depends. I mean, there are some conservation groups who are very keen to work with anglers. Now, we may disagree on particular issues, but they see the merit of what we do. And it depends on the group. Some groups are always going to be against angling, and you can understand why people might think that. I don't agree with it. I fished all my life, but I'm not necessarily going to hate somebody because they disagree with me. But I think conservationists need to have a more pragmatic approach. I mean, back in the old days, if you read Steinbeck's Log from the Sea of Cortez, marine biologists used to eat turtles at night. They were intrinsically involved. They had that connection with the sea. They have the connection with the people who work the sea. And to me, that's really important. It's something we sort of go away from. As I said, we are ignoring experts. You're ignoring, if you talk to a shark skipper, any shark skipper, if whoever I talk to, I will learn something.
Yes.
And it's how you capture that knowledge. And for me, that is, you can do all you like in the lab and you can come up with all these great theories. If you don't talk to the people who actually know, you're wasting an awful lot of effort.
Yeah, and I agree. And the knowledge some of those people have is absolutely fantastic. Listen, Simon, I feel like we opened number of threads and we never finished any of them. So let's finish one of them. And can you give us a guideline on tackle, what tackle to use? And then once you use that tackle, how to properly boat a fish and when not to boat a fish. And because you mentioned specifically, like if they have a door and they have a platform, the reality is that very few both angling boats, privately owned as well as the charter boats, have doors or platforms or anything like that. So if you could just give us this no nonsense guide on tackle and then handling, boating, releasing, best practices for blue shark.
Yeah, I mean, with tackle, I'm slightly more relaxed than some. I just say use tackle that's suitable for the size of fish you're going to get. Obviously, use a wire trace. I mean, I've got a particular setup I use. I don't use wire all the way through. I use 6 foot of wire. Then I've got 18 foot of mono. Other use wire all the way through. The reason I don't use wire all the way through is A, it's a pain to glove when you're the wire man, and also if a shark wraps all the way around, if he gets onto the mono, and you quite often they'll spin off the top. I've seen them spin off the top. If then he bites through the main line, if you've got wire wrapped around him, that shark's probably not going to survive. Whereas a blue can turn on itself, and I've seen them do it. They can turn back and sort of cut themselves loose. And I've caught, but that's a personal thing. That's not something that I would say always use the suitable wire. For me, circle hooks are a no-brainer. They work better. I mean, I probably over a season, once a hook is in properly, I might lose 1 or 2 fish.
Mm. Is that different? Do you strike differently into a fish with circle hook? Are you waiting longer, or you?
No, I hit them as soon as that ratchet's going, and they're taking line steadily. I literally put it in the gear, slide the gear forward. You got a lever drag. Set your clutch, whatever, hold the rod, never strike, just wait until he's taking line and he's on there. Simple as that. And for the close in rod, I actually set the rod in gear with enough drag so the rod doesn't go over the side, so instant hook up. And I've actually changed my hook slightly. I used to use the mustard standard mustard 15-0s, and I've dropped to a finer wire, smaller hook by talking to other skippers. And I've actually got some of used to not gut hook them on circles, but used to catch at the back of the mouth. So it was a pain to get them out. And I found by using these finer wire hooks, virtually all of them are actually snug in the corner of the mouth. That would be my number one thing. People do catch sharks on stupid light gear, and that's fine if you're experienced. But, I would say, if you're doing it for the first time, first of all, talk to a skipper who knows what they're talking about. Don't use silly light gear. Don't play a fish for, you don't want to be playing a blue shark for an hour. The most I've ever seen a blue shark played for was 45 minutes, and that was a 215-pound male. So, that was just a sea creature. It's not you're not judged as an angler on how long it takes you to boat a fish. It's not a good thing that it took you time. Use gear so you can get that fish into the beside the boat as quickly as you can. Blue sharks wrap. You've probably seen it yourself. Wrap. It tends to happen more on rough days and with inexperienced anglers. So try and be steady when you're pumping. Don't give them slack line or they'll wrap. if they wrap, you'll know it instantly. And you pull them in backwards. Not the best thing for the sharks, but fortunately blue sharks are less susceptible to that than something like a thresher. All my hooks are barbless. I crushed the barb, a pair of pliers. None of this leaving it to the second run and that sort of thing. As soon as that fish is going steadily, he's got the bait. It's not like they're going to, a bit like pike. Pike are a bit different. They'll take a bait, they'll take it off, and then they'll eat it. But blues, in my experience, you can hook them pretty quickly. A blue shark's a dangerous animal. I know people who've been bitten. So one of the most important things, wear gloves if you're going to leader it. I unhook in the water. I either use a large T-bar or I use, we've got a pole we got from the States with sort of that funny shaped little pig's tail on the end of it. That works okay. If you want to bring them on board, make sure you support the internal organs. So don't just sort of grab the trace and pull it over. If you've got a way of doing it and it's going to take two of you, you need to find a way of getting it on board where you support the middle part of it. That is very important. You can do it easier from a door because you can put like a mat down and slide them in. If you've got two of you, lift them. There are really good instructions on the Shark Trust site about this.
That's
about
right.
How to bring fish on board. Never put them on a hot deck. Hose down the deck. Preferably have a mat. I cover their eyes, so I put a damp cloth over their eyes. It seems to calm them down. A lot of people do induce them into some sort of almost trance by touching their nose. Don't go near the nose end. There's some really important bits there that they use to find prey. Don't piss with them like that. It's not a good idea.
That's a sharp end also of the shark.
Yeah, obviously avoid the sharp end. Blue sharks are squirmers, so beware of that. If I had a deck hose that wasn't a torrent, I would probably put the hose into its mouth to run water over its gills. You can either take, if you can't see the hook, don't be a vet, don't be a surgeon. Just chop it as close as you can, the wire as close as you can. That would be my opinion. Don't go through the gills. There are too many sensitive bits there. If you hit something and it bleeds, you've very likely killed that fish. Try not to keep it out of the water too long. I would suggest if you want to take photographs, kneel, and you are bringing them on board, kneel beside the fish rather than get people to lift it. It's a hell of a lot easier. I've seen, you can see some pictures when people are lifting these fish and you'll see marks where they're actually bruised from damage. Fish may recover, it may not, but, my advice would be kneel beside the fish, get somebody to take a photograph if you bring them on board. I say, personally, I don't. We don't have a door on our boat. It's probably easier in a private boat because you're lower down, or with a boat with a door. That's my advice, and that's what the tagging data tended to suggest. I say the one big no: don't lever them by the trace over the side of a large metal bar. You want to try it yourself. I've done it trying to unhook a shark. I broke 3 ribs. Now, sharks haven't got ribs.
Yeah.
If I didn't have 3 ribs, I probably would have done some serious damage. So bear that in mind. You can easily damage a fish. They're not indestructible. But we treat them right. The evidence is fantastic. We get fantastic rates of recovery.
Yeah. And from your experience, charter skippers, and I know you probably don't want to get on the wrong side of charter skippers, but you see them usually sticking to those practices, or is it more of a, I need to get it fish quickly to the boat and, get the customers, take a photo, and at the end of the day, it's their fish, so therefore they can do whatever they want. And, there's also always this argument like, it's, at least we release it, so it has zero chance of recovery, while if we, kill the fish and take it for steaks or whatever that is, then the chance of recovery is 0.
I am qualified as a charter skipper. I can understand there are commercial reasons why you would, and there's a lot of pressure from customers to bring fish on board. I totally understand it. I mean, I think the majority of skippers treats sharks extremely well. And I think even those who pick them up for photographs, they're very experienced. They do it in the best way they can. As I say, my preference is not to do it that way. I'm very loath to, say to a skipper, be prescriptive, don't do something. I think things will change. I think with the advent of the GoPro, you get fantastic pictures in the water, you get stunning pictures in the water. But I do understand, if somebody's paid for a boat and they want to take a picture of a shark, I do understand why skippers do it. And I think that the best we can do is to have guidelines, talk to skippers, understand their concerns. And, if we increase their handling by a bit, that's something. You still aren't going to, we want to put fish back. It's everyone's interest with the maximum chance to survive. But
I also think that they have so much experience that they're sometimes doing things that you don't even think of doing, and they just know what they're doing. And if the same maneuver, let's say with a shark, was attempted by angler who sees 5 sharks in a year, that will be quite different thing than done by a person who does like 5 sharks a day for a season, and they know those little things, and they that's what I think as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're dead right there. I think there are small boat owners, there are some fantastic ones out there. There's some that go out there a lot, catch a lot of sharks. But there are others who think, they go out there, they want their trophy picture, they haven't got the experience with it. I mean, like I say, talk to a skipper, look at the guidelines. There are guidelines on the Shark Angling Club of Great Britain's page. There are guidelines on the Shark Trust's page for how to handle fish. Just think about it, but also think about it for your own safety. I mean, if you get too near, I know somebody who was bitten by a shark and was airlifted off to hospital.
Exactly. I think it was in. I don't know. It was. I'm sure that there was a case like that in Ireland.
Oh, was there? I know somebody who from Wales.
Yeah, so there was more than once that the teeth, and like, I definitely don't recommend to do that. But I did touch the teeth of the shark, and it's like unbelievable how it's like kind of like a china, almost very, very hard material, and if the shark starts thrashing about on the boat and cut one of your veins or arteries or like major blood part in your body, then you effectively can bleed out, and this can be potentially very, very dangerous. So I don't want to scare off like, it's a very dangerous thing to go shark fishing. It's probably not, but still, it's a little bit like cutting wood with a chainsaw. It's not that dangerous, but you can get seriously hurt. And I think it's the same thing with blue sharks. Sharks in general.
I mean, I can tell you a story. I mean, out of the fish that I've leaded, I've never been bitten, but one day I got complacent. There was a small blue. The circle hook was in a slightly difficult place. I was trying to T-bar her off in the water. As I raised my hand, the shark came with me and landed on my shoulder. First. Now, as it happens, it didn't have time to bite me, but it very easily could. And, that is just me being complacent. I'd seen 20, 30 sharks that day. It was a pup. I was just not thinking. I did something dumb, and I nearly paid for it. There is not a lot of people who get, bitten by them, but beware, wear gauntlets, always have your tackle for removing your hooks, have everything set up. That's another thing I'd definitely say. I mean, I've got bolt cutters for chopping the hook in half if I have to, wire cutters, 2 or 3 sets of T-bars, all the things you need, gloves, everything, have them to hand. Don't make it like a rush to do once that fish is there, especially if you're inexperienced. You're like, oh my God, I got this fish, and get to the side of the boat. And the same if you want to take a picture, have your camera equipment ready. Don't make it, try and minimize the amount of time you've got to expose the shark to, to an environment it doesn't want to be in. don't take a fish out of the water for 15 minutes. Don't do dumb things with them. As I say, my preference is to leave them in the water, but I'm not prescriptive on that. There's some skippers who, from tagging returns, have fantastic tag return rates, who do bring the sharks out of the water. Most of them have doors. They're very experienced. My experience with skippers is if you talk to them, you can modify their behavior. If you start to be prescriptive, then you've got to do this.
But it's also kind of like what we said. Yeah, but it's also like we said, like, ultimately it's your fish, and a lot of skippers are, want to make you happy, and then it's entirely up to you to say, like, hey, but I want this fish to be handled best possibly, to the best standard, and if you think that it shouldn't be brought into the water, don't bring it out of the water. And I think that there's no skipper who would say, like, no, I have to bring it back out of the water or anything like that.
No, I don't know of any. From the boat I worked on, Mirage at Plymouth, Dave was employed by the university. I was working for Plymouth Marine Laboratories at the time. If we brought fish out of the water, it probably could have affected us professionally as well. It would have reflected badly on us professionally. We made it very clear to customers that that's how we operated. Saying that, I brought fish out of the water because they've been tangled really badly. There are circumstances where you've got to do it. If you look at a fish and you think, oh my God, that fish isn't going to survive, I'm not going to cut all that stuff off it, then cut all the stuff off it. Again, if you're going to bring them on board, there's some things to do. Don't put them on a hot deck, as I said before. That you can see the damage. You'll turn a shark over, it would have changed color. It's got very important things up its nose. For hunting, its tail's very important, but mainly avoid trying to damage the middle sections. Internal injuries to sharks. They'll swim off fine, but they'll die in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
How
do you call those organs on the nose of the shark?
The ampullae of Lorenzini.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lorenzini ampulls. Yes. Okay, Simon. So now, just to stay on the realm of angling, when you're fishing for blue sharks, you're really effectively baiting sharks to your boat by setting up that slick. And like, what's your preferred optimum rubby-dubby composition? And are you different? You're using different ones depending on the time of the year or a place where you fish, or you have pretty much the standard?
My absolute favorite would probably be fresh sardine. Chopped and mushed, if I could get a hold of it, which we can at times. Pollock livers. There's a very good reason for using pollock livers. If you mash them up, they start to degrade the flesh. The enzymes in them start to degrade the flesh of the sardine a bit, just to release a bit more flavour. Oil, good quality pilchard oil, and bran. And the other trick I would say, if you've got a day when it's wind against tide and your slick's very shallow, so in effect you've got your slick is going away from you quite shallow, or add things like halibut pellets to it. But good quality pilchard oil or good quality fish oil, I think is quite important. But the trouble with it, if it's not mixed in with other stuff, you'll see a lovely slick on the surface, but of course, because oil and water is particularly miscible, it will be exactly that. It won't actually be where the fish can detect it.
Yeah,
that would be my absolute favourite. The thing, I've tried all sorts of nonsense over the years. Pig's blood to me is just a waste of time. It just doesn't do anything.
It doesn't. I don't think it worked. I don't think. I tried myself dried blood, and
we used all that. I did have a supply of dried sardine blood, which I can't possibly tell you where I got it from, which was absolutely amazing. But I only had a limited supply of that. It was fantastic. But I think these blue sharks don't tend to detect mammal blood. It's a different.
Exactly. This is an important thing. Like it's they're not feeding on seals. They're feeding on other fish.
I'm very particular about changing the bags. Depending on how the day's going, I will change the bags more frequently or less frequently. Some days sharks respond to a huge amounts of chum. Other days you need to cut it down a little bit, I would say.
Why would you cut it down?
I say, well, as soon as if I've got 20 or 30 sharks in my slick, and they're going nuts, I don't need, they're already doing what I want. I don't need to cut it down. Other days when you're sitting in your own slick, that's you. I strongly, if you've got no wind and you're just sitting, you'll see the slick go right around the boat. You watch a shark, it's confused. You watch a shark come over a narrow slick, well, zigzag like that. They're trying to define the edges of the slick to try and locate where it's coming from. If you're sitting there on a calm day and you've got this slick going around the boat, it confuses them. I honestly think it overloads their senses and they can't really work out where it's coming from. So on days like that, I don't think it pays to put a huge amount of stuff in the water. There are other ways around it. You can start the motor and just very slowly edge across the tide, trying to get that slick away from the boat on them calm days. But sharks on calm days tend to be lethargic anyway. It's difficult, but I tend to cut down on the amount of slick I put in the water on those days.
What would, in your opinion, be the optimal speed of drift for?
I don't think it matters. Some of the best days I've had, I've been drifting north to south, half a knot. But my slick, because it's wind against tide, has been barreling away from me at probably a knot and a half, 2 knots, something like that. I think it's how much your slick travels is more important than your speed of drift for blues. Yeah. So if you think about it, if you blues tend to around here, they'll go east to west, west to east. They don't tend to go north to south as much. So if you're going across the tide, north to south, you're covering more fish, in my opinion.
Right. And is that your observation as well? You said that in a nice day they're lethargic, but define a nice day. I found, and maybe just a bias, that when there's a sunny day, but with a bit of wind, that tends to be the best weather.
Yeah, I would say I've had some of my best catches when I can barely stand up, and
Oh, really?
It's like being shot by the rain. But yeah, my preference would be, I can see them easier. My preference would be something like a 3 to 4, 3 to 4 breeze. Doesn't matter, as long as it's not norwesterly, it doesn't matter around here. Easterly's fine, with the tide going against me, and just enough so I'm actually not going, I'm not standing still, but I'm sort of going across the tide. That would be my absolute preference. I tend to, on days when my slick is shallow, because I've got those conditions, like I said, I'll add something like halibut pellet just to get some scent a little bit further down, because I feel it tends to stick too far up in the water. But yeah, that would be my favorite, would be trickling across the tide. So I'm doing half a knot, something like that, 3/4 of a knot across the tide would be my absolute favorite. As for sunny, I think as long as you've got a chop, it's fine.
But probably not too much chop, because then the slick will be kind of chopped as well.
I've had some.
But you said that you had a great days with you barely could stood.
Yeah. I've had. We don't tend to fish, because the distance you're talking for consistent sharking out of here, you're talking 20 mile normally. Some years they come closer, but for really consistent sharking, we're talking 20 odd miles. So you are restricted in the number of days you can do that. But yeah.
and listen, and you also, so you said you're using bran to kind of carry the slick and the scent down to the water column. And then when you hanging, so then obviously you're using, for a bait, using mackerel, I presume, like everybody else.
Mackerel, whiting. Whiting's a fantastic blue shark bait.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Some of my biggest fish have been on whiting.
Oh, that's interesting. I never use whiting.
If you get them, it's worth trying. I I presume it's because they've probably been scavenging from the trawlers, so they've probably got a taste for it, you know.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah,
no, it's a good info, because actually I know that on the grounds when I fish more often for blue sharks, catching whiting is kind of like a way how you passing time while you're waiting for sharks. So that's a good tip. You can use that whiting. And listen, I presume then also you, and I hope like a lot of people who listen to that will get that information. Are you like fishing a number of rods and you tend to put your bait on a different depth on each rod?
Yep.
Or do you have like yes, that's what you do.
Yeah. I tend to put the furthest away rod down deep. Often it stays untouched all day. It tends to be, if we're going to get a poor big, it might be on it. But there are some days when feeds, I presume in feeds in short supply, where we will catch numbers of blues on the deepest rod. If I was just fishing for blues, I'd probably go out a rod at 100. Sort of 80. The next one in 80, next one in 40 or 20, depending on the day. Again, depending on that angle of drift, how much farther you're going away from the boat. And the nearest rod would be close to the boat with just the leader out of sight. That's what I'd have. I would say the vast majority of blue sharks you will catch will be on the shallower rods.
Yes. Did you ever had a situation where the shark like took one bait and then it took another one, and then all of a sudden you have 2 rods hooked into one fish?
Yeah. I've had that before. Yeah, that's never fun. We have double hookups are fine. Triple hookups start to get difficult. 4 at a time is an absolute horror story, because you know what they're going to do. They're all going to go like that. They're not going to go be nice sharks and go in different, in different directions. They have to go cross each other. But I've had the same shark take 2 hooks. I don't think I've ever had the same shark take 3 hooks. But yeah, it's quite a common occurrence. It's easier to see if you've got a weight. Some days I'll use a weight down the line, some days I won't. Again, it depends on how much that drift is sort of pulling away and what depth I want to bait the fish. But some of the skippers I know catch very good numbers of big fish. They have an unweighted outside rod, so it'll be set really deep, but it won't have a weight on it. And on the days when you've got a lot of pull away, that won't be fishing deep. It'll just be fishing a long way away from the boat. And there are certainly occasions where very big blues are reluctant to come close to the boat, so you might just sneak one. There are all sorts of tricks you use. I probably move the baits a lot more than other people, so I will actually pull in by hand an amount of line. It's a bit like trying to tease a cat. If I know there's a shark in a slick, one shark in a slick can be hellish difficult to catch. 2 fairly easy. There's 10 sharks in your slick, they'll go nuts. It's a feeding frenzy. If I know I've got a shark in a slick, I will start moving baits. I will change my baits.
How do you know? How do you know? You know because you see the fin, or because you see the activity on the rod?
Things like gulls taking off in a pattern. You'll see one gull take off its next one. You know the movement they're doing. You'll catch a flash of one out of the corner of your eye. And, it's quite cool when you're crewing, because you'll see a shark slap the outside float with his tail. And you'll say, I'll just turn around to the bloke and say, you're about to get a bite on that rod, mate. And the reel will go, and they'll think, oh, well, that's really brilliant. He's some sort of genius. It's just like, no, I've just seen it happen so many times. I know what's going to happen,
Oh, man, all that conversation makes me want to go shark fishing again.
Yeah. The amount of time you spend out there, you get, I'm not one of these boats who'll go and sit in a cabin. Myself, with Dave, who I work with, we work really, really well together. And I'll be on the deck the whole time. I'll be doing something the whole time I'm out there. I'll be looking for fish. I'll be changing bags. I'll be, trying all different little bits, Sometimes
what I notice, and I think that a lot of people agree with that even if you're fishing, like if you're fishing on the ground there where there are other fish whiting and whatnot, that fishing also helps to attract the shark because they can sense the fish thrashing around as you pull them up. So even from that perspective, like, why would you sit on the boat, sit in a cabin, or I know about the group of German anglers who are coming year after year to Ireland, and they go as far as bringing our mattresses, and they putting mattresses on the engine cover, and they putting baits out, and they're lying down the engine covers. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so much else people can see. I mean, as a biologist, I point out other wildlife. We see whales regularly, we see dolphins most time we're out, different seabirds, jellyfish, those cone jellies. You see all sorts of things you'd see, and if you talk to people about it, they'll actually be a high degree of interest, and you make their day. My motto is make their day better if I can. It's not just about the sharks; it's about being out at sea. We love being out at sea, don't we? We do this. We love catching fish, but a bad day at sea, you don't blank very often on blues, but a bad day out there is still awesome, isn't it?
I agree.
Yeah, you're definitely right with vibration. I mean, I'll give you an example. It's all this stuff about how much blood in the water a blue shark can actually sense. It's about a drop in an Olympic-sized swimming pool would be about right. So they're pretty good, but you think about the size of the ocean, you need quite a lot. Sharks, though, can hear from a long distance. I mean hear, they actually have an ear. One of the things that I would definitely say, and a lot of skippers do it, I mean, one of the very old Lou skippers didn't use chum at all. He just used 3 coconuts and a bit of string. So it used to go bonk, bonk, bonk on the ocean. And that noise is really important. You can get a shark to the boat. If you see a shark at the end of your slick, you want him to come closer. If you bang those bags, he'll come and have a look.
Wow. And so that brings me to another question that I have for you. Have you used with any success any other ways of chumming or attracting sharks, namely sound devices that are making sound? You obviously mentioned coconuts or just moving, but you can even buy it's called a shark magnet shark magnet that makes sound. And then also there are devices that are emitting some sort of light, like a flashlight or anything like that. Have you ever used them with any success? Any opinions on those?
I've used lights on the deep rods occasionally. I can't say I've noticed it make any difference. I will say Muppets, above your trace, sharks love orange. Blue sharks, orange and yellow, absolutely adore it. I haven't used any of those shark attractors. I know people who do. Sharks are very sensitive to low frequency noise, so in theory it should work. But I found just banging, if you bang a bag enough, it lets more chum into the water, but also, fish will come and investigate. I would say there is some scope for it. I mean, I have used other devices. I've used a little device I came up with, which is passive but produces a weak electrical current.
Oh.
Which I
Did it work?
The first time I did it, actually repelled sharks.
Okay, not exactly what
you actually watched it. You put it. I had too many. I'd mucked it up slightly. The blue would come near it, go, oh my god, and run away. And I thought, okay, that one didn't work very well. I sort of adapted it, and it works better. I'd say really, really good trick if you want to see a blue shark chase something. Those kiddies noodles. Those swimming noodles? Right, chop one up into sections, put a rope through the middle of it, let it to the end of your slick when you've got a blue shark in it, and jig it back across the surface. You watch them go for that. They absolutely love it.
Wow. That's also, that's straight away things like you can try to catch a shark kind of like on the spinning gear almost.
Yeah, you could do it. Yeah. I've seen a friend of mine caught one on fly gear. People do it quite regularly.
On fly gear?
Yeah, heavy fly gear. You can buy specialist over here. You can buy specialist fly gear.
Wow.
They use.
What that would be that in terms of rod rating?
Oh God, I was it like a 16 rated, whatever it is. You can actually buy. Rock Max sell a whole range of gear for that sort of thing, and there are skippers who are far more experienced in that than myself. or Dave, but we have seen people catch them. The only thing, I've never seen one take an unbaited fly. You've always got to have a little strip of mackerel on the end, but I'm sure there are very skillful fly anglers out there who can do it. You could definitely catch one on a lure if you wanted to. I'd say go orange or red. I've had them chase lures plenty of times.
Really?
Yeah, you can get them. Yeah, normally in one of my failed attempts to catch a stone bass that's in the slick.
Yeah,
oh
wow.
Yeah, which is something we used to see. Funny enough, we used to see more than we do now. It used to be quite common. You used to see they'd hide under the boat, and when you started the engine at the end of the day, you'd suddenly see a stone bass go whoop, right like that. You know?
Wow. So you did use some other devices. Listen, one other thing on the gear. Like, what's your view or preference in terms of floats? Because I think that the conventional way is just use the balloon by like a pack of balloons, and this is what you use. But then, as at least from my experience, number one, you need to kind of tie that balloon to a line, and then maybe when you're bringing back fish, then that balloon probably not gonna untie that easily, and then you either try to if you have a reel with the guide, then you have a problem with that, and then obviously balloon can either gull will pierce it or something, and it will end up in the water, and sea turtles will die screaming after eating that balloon and so on. So what's your are you like firmly against using balloons, like don't do it, or it's like it's one of the ways but it's not the optimum way, and what's your...
Certainly I never use balloons. I mean, I came up with a quick release shark float years ago. I've been selling it locally for about 10 years. Other people now produce something very similar.
Where people can buy that float?
I mean, I have sold them to people, just other skippers.
I thought that you have like an online shop.
I think people like Mike Wallace and I'm trying to think the name of the other bloke. They've got their own versions of quick release floats. I mean, it's not I've been using them for years, to be honest. My own, if it's on my own boat. So basically they'll take it, the float will pop and run down the line. I have a little swivel so I can actually take the float off, so then you're straight on it, that sort of thing. The disadvantage, you've got to reset every time, but if you want to do it properly, I would just mark your line. So I literally put a marker pen at that depth, so you can let your line out to that depth, clip it straight back on. There you go. That would be my favorite. I don't like balloons for a number of reasons you mentioned. I find it extremely annoying when dumb Fulmer puts his beak through it and then you have to reset. But most of my floats have got marks of honor on them. They got years of either gull beak marks or actually where the sharks have grabbed them.
Yeah.
What blues will do? They'll come up, they'll have a look. They normally snap it with their tail. But if they see that fluorescent colour, they'll come up and go, I like that. So I've actually got a favourite float that's 8 years old, and I still bring it out, and it just about works, but it's got so many teeth marks in it now.
It's a lucky float, I bet.
It is. It's really lucky float.
How you minimize the entanglement with gulls and birds, because that's another annoying thing, right? You have a lines out and you have all that slick, and inevitably you have a whole flock of gulls, and then next thing you know, you have a gull tangled in your line, and then you have to bring it back and reset, untangle that pissed off bird, which sometimes is not easy.
I mean, I say it rarely happens with herring gulls. Fulmars are just so stupid. I mean, they'll repeatedly do it. The same one will try it 3 or 4 times before they finally manage to actually, entangle themselves. I mean, the best answer is get a shark in the slick. Most of the time, as soon as the shark. And though I've seen a fulmar eaten twice by a shark.
Really?
I mean, most fulmars eventually will get the idea that, this large creature with teeth coming near it is not a great idea. But a couple of times I've looked out the corner of my eye, I heard a squawk, and half a gull floats away in the slick, and there's a blue shark with feathers in his mouth.
Seriously?
So, yeah, I've seen it
Wow.
twice. I've seen it twice. I've also seen one female blue shark kill a small male in which we hooked. As we were going to unhook it, the female came and just bit it across the gills. It wasn't a monster female either. It was only sort of 70, 80 pounds, something like that. I mean, they definitely will. You know, once you've got sharks into, you know, like I said, you've got 20 sharks in the slick, they are just going for it. They are absolutely set. You know, we will eat absolutely anything. But it's really funny because you watch one shark. I mean, you will get occasions where it takes you an hour and a half to get that one shark to take on a slow day. But something as simple as dropping your wire size, if you're using sort of with a 400 pound, drop it to 200. I mean, a blue ain't going to go through 200 and the best of it. I prefer dark wire. That would be the other thing I'd say. I do use clear wire. I think the AFW wire is the best out there.
Yes, absolutely.
It is absolutely brilliant because the other thing, it doesn't fracture into a million pieces. And then when I'm walking around the room later, I don't end up with bits of wire stuck in my foot. But it is the best wire. I'd say if you don't use that, the other trick which I use is I buy the cheap stuff and I get some stainless steel colouring pens and I do like cryptic camouflage on my traces. So I have white, blue, black, sort of just break the outline up. Because if you look underwater and you see your camera stuff, the clear stuff on a sunny day sticks out like a sore thumb. The dark stuff less, but if you cryptic camouflage your traces, that seems to work. Yeah,
I agree. American fishing wire.
I mean, some of the biggest sharks I've seen have been hooked on my right hand. That's the other thing I'd say. They've been beside the boat, and I've been literally just hooking to get them. They'll take it out of my hand, I'll hold them, and I'll let the rod go.
I had it once while fishing for pollock, and I remember we had like a shark rod that just in case, you never know.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you have this pollock and you see the shark. It actually, I don't remember now whether it grabbed it or attempted to grab, but we see the shark kind of cruising around the boat. And so quick! We put the fishing with shark rod and we didn't even manage to put the float or anything. It's that literally the moment that bait hit the water is like boom, and you have a run. It's like wow. So that day we ticked like all the boxes, all the possible species, including a shark that we didn't target.
No, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I remember probably the best year we had, which was 2015. Though the sharks are there early, I personally don't tend to think they're consistent enough until July to really worth going. But we knew they were there because when we were conger fishing, they were grabbing the tail of the conger. I mean, literally biting conger tails, and that was sort of mid-June, something like that. And suddenly, what happened here? It went heavy. You get it in and there's a bite mark on the tail and you think it looks like a blue. And then you let your mackerel bait down and then disappear because the damn thing's bitten through the hook. And, you thought, I mean, they are, they will definitely, but, your point about attracting them by fishing for other species is very valid. It's one of them things, as long as people are quick enough to get the damn gear out of the way when there's a run,
Yes, exactly. Do you have any techniques of selectively trying to catch bigger fish? And obviously maybe that's also a good moment to say like, I'm kind of throwing out knowledge that I have, and you can, either debunk or confirm that really what fish that we have here, I mean, around the British Isles, it's a juvenile fish. You're not gonna get, because they grow to 600 pounds, like the ones that you're fishing around Florida and coast and stuff like that.
They grow to 400. I mean, the biggest one I've seen a picture of is one that Chippy had out of Penzance. And though the formula said was, 260, it was a 300-pound fish every day of the week. The formula that we use for blue sharks is just rubbish. It's just, No, it was based on marlin.
I don't remember even that formula that you got these 3 dimensions, but then you have like a bracket really of weights.
It's not very accurate, but I mean that was a massive fish. I believe there have been some of similar size caught in the Celtic deeps, but the majority of fish, you're right in saying, are immature females.
Mm-hmm. It's 200 and I think 209 pounds is the Irish record.
I think 215 is the official British one, but I mean we had a male that I did it from photographs and various techniques. Knocked off a few inches here and there just to make it, and it was around about 215. So I know it was a huge fish. It was a monster. But yeah, the opening up of the Celtic deeps and the Penzance fishery, has led to an increase. I would say there have been some enormous fish caught down there. I don't know if they've always been there and we've just never really known about it, or whether it is a real change. I will say some years you see much bigger blues than you'd expect. Some days 100-pounder, you'd expect to get a fish around that size, but there are, conversely, there's a lot more very small fish. If you look at the Shark Club records from years ago, even the old boys will tell you, that most of the fish were sort of 50, 60 pounds, something like that. I mean, we'll get days where a lot of our fish are 20 pound, things like that. We call them pups. But yeah, I mean, tips for big ones. It's really difficult. I'd say whiting. One of the things is a whiting bait. I mean, normally I'd say, I've had a lot of, as I say, put a bait away from a boat. Some of those big girls won't come close. But the very biggest fish I had, the 2 biggest fish I've had, have been right next to the boat. The biggest one we had, I dropped, which is the weirdest thing. We were getting plagued by pups. They all had bite marks on them, so I knew there was a male there. I dropped Andy Mansfield's bait into the water. It was grabbed by a 10-pound pup. Suddenly, this 10-pound pup went absolutely berserk. 45 minutes later, we've got this enormous male blue shark to the side of the boat. So I guess he must have actually muscled that pup off the bait.
Huh. That's interesting. That's interesting. It's always like the biggest fish is always like the weirdest coincidence happen, and then you get this special catch.
Absolutely nutty. I mean, it's one of them. You get to the side of the boat and you think, yeah, that's a lot bigger than I've ever seen before. It was one of them moments. It's like, well, mate, and that was, people who say blue sharks don't fight have never seen a big male. I mean, there's been some very big males caught down in Penzance and at Falmouth in the last year, which again is unusual. We haven't seen it, and that reflects how changes in the environment change the sharks we get here. So.
And we get in a second to that. I just want to finish off on the angling front. Is there anything to that point that we missed that you would like to share, or are we pretty much?
I mean, I know a lot of some of the lads are now using toothbrushes and things like that as a sort of vibration or attractor. People are selling them. I mean, I've played around with them. People are selling their own devices. I mean, my experience with them is they seem to work better for pool beagles for some reason, but I wouldn't count them out. I think it's a good idea. I mean, sharks, whether it's working by a true vibrational thing or whether it's actually that weak electrical current. I mean, when sharks are hunting live fish, they get close to them. That is a very, very important part of their hunting strategy. Yeah, so once you're inside the eyes, I mean, if you watch a blue shark take a bait, it's quite strange. A dead bait, they're often sort of cartwheel around it a lot, and I don't know if that's because they're trying to work out exactly what it is because they can't detect that current coming off it.
You're right,
but yeah, I think that's something that you could definitely use to get more bites on your particular rod. I wouldn't say it's a way of getting more fish into your slick, though. A good slick, and I'd say the use of sand would be my 2 tips.
Sand.
Sand.
Oh,
sand. Sorry, actually making that noise. I think that's.
Oh.
I think, and I mean, the other thing you can do, which works bizarrely, sometimes turn the engine on. Sometimes if you know you've got fish in the slip, you turn the engine on. For some reason, they'll come and have a look. And I don't know it's whether that they associate that with a trawl being brought on board, or things
My thought exactly. That could be kind of they learn
in response.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so I think that the last thing that we need to touch on is how would you identify place where to set up slick and drift? You're on your webinar, which is on Angling Trust website, and I would encourage anyone to go and check that webinar. You mentioned places where there's a different water salinity, as I remember. But I guess like a regular anglers, they don't have access to this sort of data. So what tips would you say, like if someone has a boat and want to start or want to optimize their chances?
First of all, I'd say water depth. Blue sharks don't like coming into shallow water, even though they may not dive deep. They tend to stay further away from the coast. I mean, we will get them inside. Some years we get them quite close in. Boats do get them 8-10 miles out, but from here it tends to be water over 200 foot, I would say. Penzance is a bit difficult. If you've got a way of measuring the temperature on your boat through your sounder and things like that, I would look for a water temp. I mean, blue sharks in our waters, the evidence is your catches are better between sort of 12 degrees and 18.5. If you've got a warm summer, I look for temperature changes. So what's called tidal fronts and things like that, ocean fronts. So if you go half a mile and your water temperature changes by 2 degrees, that's a really good area, because that's a hot spot for primary production. It's a hot spot for bait.
Does it matter if it changes up or changes down? Or
it changes horizontally, so you'll actually see it as you go along.
Gotcha.
Yeah, your sounder will be reading sort of 14, say 17, 17, go up to 19. Now the thing is, if the temperature is very high, if it's above about 18.5, look for the cold side of the front. If it's below, look for the warm side. So, I'll give you an example. One day, I think we had something like 19 fish by doing this. There was a boat to the south, 2 miles to the south of us, on the warm side where the temperature was about 19, very high. They had one fish all day. So, it does make a massive difference. Look for temperature breaks. That you will find them in vicinities of wrecks. Avoid very heavy algal blooms. You're really going to struggle to catch fish in heavy algal blooms. I use satellite technology quite a lot to pinpoint areas to avoid, and also use it to pinpoint areas to go to, where the temperature, if you get an idea where a temperature will change. The other thing is talk to skippers. Skippers, they may not know why they know this stuff, but they'll know areas where
they may not want to tell you, like
but there are, I'm quite happy to talk to anyone. Anyone wants to talk to me about it, I'm more than happy to talk about it. That would be my advice. I tend to look to start the drift in areas near wrecks, or try and cover some wrecks. We're lucky we got loads of wrecks out of here. Not so lucky for the sailors, obviously, but it was. I will tend to look for an area that's got a larger percentage of wrecks or things like that, so we can cover. You often find them, they won't necessarily hang about wrecks for long, but they will visit them. Whether that works or not, I don't know. Other skippers fish, they fish particular areas all their life. My big thing, we look for a temperature break, we'll look for some structure on the bottom, look for that depth of water. I think that, that would be never cut anyone else's slick. It doesn't do anything to the body. If you've got another boat, give them 2 miles clearance. It doesn't do either of you any favors. Both of you will catch less sharks. You're not going to nick sharks off them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
That would be, but there's plenty of room out there. People want to go and do it in a small boat. They do it for, I know some lads come down regularly, have fantastic times out, never bother anyone. Brilliant. If they want to talk to me, I'll say where I suggest. I mean, we've all got our favourite areas. It's like, we got areas we tend to do, but I mean, the day we had the big shark, the day before we blanked, the first time in 9 years I've actually blanked, and I was absolutely gutted because I had a good friend on board. Missed a run within 5 minutes, never had a touch all day, and fishing had been a bit hard. So gone home, talked to one of my mates down in Loo. He said, "No, it's been a bit better down there." Looked at the satellite imagery, thought, "Well, that area looks really good. We're going to have a look out there." Did a few extra miles. We had 17 up to 215, so you can't argue with that. It's yeah.
When you say you look at the satellite imagery, you look at the what are you looking at? Because you're looking at the sea.
I've got particular sites I look at, which give you sea surface temperature.
Oh, sea surface. Oh, I got you. Yeah, that was what I was looking for. Like, for what type of features you look?
Yeah, I'm looking for sea surface temperature and algal blooms and stuff like that. So I'm looking for areas where the temperature changes suddenly. So you get you might get a 1 or 2 degree temperature break. We have a sort of semi-permanent tidal front to the east of us, which marks the sort of eastern extent of where the blue sharks go. And later in the year, that can be quite good because the sharks actually just sort of run along that front. There's food there. They're reluctant to go past it, but they're quite happy to hunt along it. So, don't always think west is best. Always think, because the Penzance skippers do so well, we'll go down there. There are occasions where going up east can, from where we are, because of particular features. It's like any sort of fishing, innit? You go wreck fishing, you're fishing, to a structure. Now, blue sharks are pelagic. Their structures are different. They're not, they're not bloody great lumps of metal stuck in the water. They're subtle things like changes in temperature, areas where there's lots of food is the main thing. You think if there's going to be lots of zooplankton in an area, there's going to be lots of fish that feed on the zooplankton. And, you don't get to be a shark that travels, 3,000 or 4,000 miles every year without knowing where food's going to be.
Yeah. Simon, what's your view on kayak fishing for sharks? You think it's a cool idea to, mix things up, or you think it's absolutely bonkers, don't do it? I mean, you people who are genuinely taking kayak on the charter boat and just dropping out the kayak in the water just to catch a fish from the kayak.
Oh, well, I mean, who am I to say? I mean, it wouldn't be my cup of tea personally. I mean, getting my feet too close to the sharp end. Put it this way, I wouldn't be dangling my toes in the water.
That's for sure.
Yeah. If people want to do it and they can do it safely, for both themselves and the sharks, knock yourself out would be my view on it. I mean, I'm not sure I'd want to do it for some of the larger species of sharks and some of the other interesting creatures we get in our waters now. But it's a bit like an Nantucket sleigh ride from the old days, isn't it? Your little boat with a harpooning a whale. That's just crazy stuff. But I know I've got a lot of friends who do it, and I've got a lot of time for it.
Oh, really? Oh.
They... Great, it's fine. It's not my cup of tea, but you do it safely. That's
I guess that's the thing. Once you know what you're doing and you take all the boxes of common sense, then you're good. Listen, Simon. So now let's touch on the subject of stocks and something that, again, on that webinar that I mentioned on a Shark Trust website or Shark Trust YouTube page, you elaborate in great detail. But for purpose of our listeners, it seems like what's your view? Because it seems like you mentioned porbeagles tend to. I'm kind of slow on saying like making a comeback, because it's always this question like whether they're a comeback or is it a change in distribution. But we see definitely more porbeagle sharks, and somehow, ironically, is like once you have more porbeagle sharks, then you hear more voices of, people towards animal rights spectrum, getting upset. Oh, don't touch them, don't fish for them. Well, there's actually much more of them than there used to be. Blue sharks, you presented quite interesting graphs that are essentially going up. We see, obviously, we know that the bluefin fishery was open again because bluefin tuna starts appearing, and I was fishing for sharks with the skipper who used to fish for bluefin, and he had the fighting chair and all that in his boat, and he kind of removed that and solved it because, like, oh, we never see a bluefin again, and there we are. So on the other hand, when you look at the reports, Living Planet report, everything is south, everything is endangered, everything is going extinct. We have a major crisis of biodiversity, all these things. And yet here we have like sort of like a contradicting data, like, well, what you're talking about, we have all those fish now appearing and there's more and more of them. And like, so what are your comments on
my comments are that ecology is hugely complicated, and
for sure
I think sometimes environmental groups tend to put they have a very straight line idea without looking a bit deeper into it. I think with the bluefin tuna is a classic example. I mean, there were strict tax put in place. There is acknowledged to be stock recovery over a reasonable period of time. They've returned in massive numbers to the southwest. I mean, we see them most trips we go out now. To sell about, it's a good news story for fisheries management. And in my opinion, you're better off selling as a good news story, saying, look, we can make a difference. I mean, the trouble with negative stuff is that you end up with, what are we going to do? Don't matter what we do, we're not going to make a difference. Whereas this is, that's a story of positive things were done, positive things happened. We are seeing a recovery. There may well be an element of redistribution as well, but data from all around the world confirms that, from the northern hemisphere, the Atlantic, especially the eastern stock, which we seem to mainly get, indicates this species has made a huge recovery. And that's great news. I would be more cautious with poor beagles. I think there are a lot more than they used to be. The problem, as I said before, with poor beagles is that they produce relatively few pups. So before you start hailing as a success, you need to see several generations happening. Blue sharks, produce lots of pups. They mature early. As sharks go, they're pretty fecund. They produce a lot of offspring. I would say the Irish data, I haven't seen the latest lot, and our data suggests there is, the one thing I'm told with certainty, there are more sharks around our coast, more blue sharks, and more apex predators around our coast than we've probably seen for my lifetime at least. It's difficult to go back any longer. Blue shark stocks globally, fit it into the model, have these fish just moved? I mean, my thought is, I think there's probably a element of stock redistribution due to the changes. I could talk about changes in salinity patterns in the North Atlantic, changes in the currents. I think that has been, I can show that has an effect. My feeling is that stocks have also recovered. There certainly are, I'll work out reasons why. They're listed as near threatened anyway, blue sharks. They're not under one of the highest levels. But the big danger to them isn't anglers. You can see from what we talked about when we touched with the tag returns, longliners are, they were previously classed as bycatch. They now have a tag for them. They now acknowledge that they're they're actually a target species for the first time. But data from anglers, in fact, your Irish program led to them setting up a tag. So that's a win. That is, for the first time, there is now a control on the number of blue sharks landed in the North Atlantic.
That's a positive side, right?
It's huge. It's hugely positive. I think we need to put together all the different catch records from different places in the world, run them through a model. But my feeling was, if a shark was going to recover in stocks, pelagic shark, the blue shark would be the one to do it first. I think we touched upon some of the other issues like the Mako shark's in serious danger. There's no doubt about that. The Mako stocks are very low. Even the best predictions give it 40 to 60 years for a recovery. Now, that may have an effect on the blue. As we talked about, it may have released the blue sharks from predation. And there may be other effects like the changes in our in our groundfish stocks, changes in our pollock numbers, changes in our cod numbers. They're eating the same food. If the way nature works, if one thing doesn't eat it, something else will. And so are the sharks actually replacing? Are we seeing a complete change in our system, our ecosystem in the UK? That would be a possibility. But yeah, I hate it when ecological groups sell a very negative picture all the time. I think you have to highlight the good things. I think some of the things they're right to highlight, but to me, bluefin tuna are a good news story, and blue sharks to me potentially can be a good news story. I'm really hopeful that poor beagles can be too, because I think they're wonderful fish. But I would say with that, it's far too early to say, whether that stock's properly recovered or not. But what I will say is that some of the fish being caught around the United Kingdom are bigger than anything that we've ever seen.
I agree with you completely. That, and again, that's a not new thing to discuss on a podcast. That sometimes when you're being fed constant bad news, some people are just not stop being receptive at all and just like shut it off, and then you lost them. And I even wrote a blog where it was on the foot of my good friend catching a porbeagle shark, posting a photo, proud angler, posting a photo with porbeagle shark, and then you obviously had a shower of like, these are critically endangered, use this, use that, and something else. And I even wrote a blog saying like, well, yes, on one hand, because like you said, this is a kind of complicated problem, because on one hand, all anglers that I know talk about fish welfare and release them quickly and all these things, but then actually they're sticking a hook in the fish and removing them from the water and making their trophy photos and so on, right? And how you reconcile that, and are you as an angler, if you hook into your porbeagle shark, so like I'm chasing porbeagle shark for many years, and I only caught a small pup, and it was like a bycatch, it was like by accident. And so if you're an angler and you catch that porbeagle shark, are you willing to put your money where your mouth was and actually not remove it from the water and take your photo? Or it's like, are you adopt the technique like, catch them while you can, because we're going to run out anyway, and this is the last chance. So it's complex. It's complex.
Well, I posed this question to somebody last week about porbeagles. I had a specific thing. I said, you've got to weigh up whether you would rather understand the species better, and the people who understand the species the best are the skippers and the people who fish for them. To do a PSAT study, I put one of these satellite tags in of fish, massively expensive. You see these studies and they've done 13 fish. I mean, whoopie-doo, and most of it, the data is inconclusive. If you talk to the skippers who really know about porbeagles, they're the ones with the knowledge, and that knowledge, weigh up what is more important to you: long-term protection of the species through knowing more about it, or short-term gain for your organization, saying, we should think there should be no fishing for them. I mean, I think it's a complicated subject, and it's, as you say, you are putting a hook in a fish. That's basically what we do. And I understand people who don't agree with it. I'm not, I don't agree with them. I enjoy what I do. I also think there are massive benefits to what we do for our health, for our sanity, and for engaging people with nature. But I understand other people's point of view, and I think that's it's the thing we should try and do. I object when these when they have these proclamations and put petitions out to ban this and that. Talk to us. I mean, that's the thing, we can talk. I'm quite happy to talk to people with other views. I'm not going to hate you. I'm not going to start a row with you. I'm not, talk, we can talk to each other. There's so much common ground. Ultimately, we both want the same thing. We want lots of numbers of fish. We want to see these sharks doing really, really well, don't we? It's in our advantage. It's in their advantage. And are you really prepared to, put something that, is angling for poor beagles really going to affect the stocks, or is bycatch from the hake fishery and, because there is a zero tack, is that the problem? Is, catching them in gill nets accidentally, is that the problem? What has a bigger effect? It's a question. It's a question organisations have to ask themselves. I mean, it is a tricky subject. For me, blue sharks are an easy one to work with because of they are a different IUCN rated level. They're less controversial, but there's masses of information out there, far more than we know. Than scientists know. Do they really want that? It's the same question. Do you really want to let that go to waste?
Yeah.
I mean, I know skippers who probably know more than anyone else on the planet about these fish, about their distribution, about their habits, about things they do. Capture that information would be my argument. If you're looking at it long term, it's as you say, we don't see a lot of poor beagles. One we see are pups. The biggest one I've ever seen was about 60, 70 pound. Actually caught. I mean, I have seen a ridiculous blue poor beagle out of New Haven years ago that did a Jaws moment on me.
Whoa.
I was trying to swing a smooth hand into the boat, and as I did it, I looked down and there was a 9-10 foot poor beagle trying to eat it. And I mean,
wow.
I did have to look twice to make sure it was a poor beagle. It was one of their moments. It was such a big fish, and everyone else on the boat saw it. And it then took my tote bait and proceeded just to very leisurely swim away until it bit through the trace.
That was my question. Did you try to catch it? But
I didn't deliberately try to catch it. It just went straight off. And it was one of those sort of, you're looking down and think, oh my God. I met a bloke on board who'd never been fishing before. And he's sort of looking at this and he's looking a bit unsurprised. And he said to me, oh, do you see these every day? It's like, no, not really, mate. He's not something I go out there and see every day.
This is with the newbies, right? Sometimes they see like something quite obvious and regular, and it's like, oh my God! And sometimes you see something out of ordinary, and then totally. Go like, well, like everything is kind of the same because everything is new.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose back to your point. I mean, you work out the number of hours that skippers and anglers spend at sea. Yeah. You imagine if scientists worked with them, how much information they could get. If you were doing that on your research vessel, it would cost you an unbelievable amount of money. But, you are ignoring experts from experience. These people know this stuff because they've been doing it for so long. They're not, just because I've got a doctorate, it doesn't make me better or cleverer than anyone else. There are people out there who have vast knowledge about these things, and we're ignoring it. I mean, that's my major motivation for doing what I'm doing. And I think environmental groups have got to actually weigh up whether they, it's a risk benefit, isn't it? What is the better way of protecting a species in long term? Is it campaigning against angling, or is it actually to work with us and maximize the amount of good we can do?
Yeah, and not to it's always kind of sticky ground because you running into danger of generalizing, and obviously there are great environmental organizations, and there are environmental organizations who are absolute shit.
Yeah, very well said.
Right, and from what I talk with scientists and and people who are in NGOs, I noticed that and even on social media, overwhelmingly scientists are recognizing what you say, that knowledge, those hours doing, whether these are hunters or anglers or skippers, they do recognize like I said, sheer number of hours spent in the environment and knowledge that comes with it. And in my observation is that these are like where the opposition is. There's mainly environmental groups who are kind of position themselves as getting people outraged to get them to donate. And then it's I think they are kind of more susceptible, those type of people, like, oh my God, they're doing this thing, I'm gonna support the organization, like, and that's where the whole situation gets derailed, because it stops revolving around like, oh, what are we trying to do, into like, how are we going to finance ourselves to do something that we say that we want to do, but mainly we need to get people upset. So then and this is this situation where it's like, and by the way, I'm not, I understand that I'm generalizing and I'm not naming any names, because there are NGOs that are doing absolutely fantastic job in working, for example, with policymakers to improve things. Listen, Simon, so just to wrap this up, final question, and this is something I always, or quite often, ending my podcast with: knowing what you know about, everything that we discussed, plus the, obviously the situation with changing climate and other negative things that are going on, what's your outlook for the future? Like, are you optimistic when it comes for the future of fish stocks, angling, fishing in general, and maybe even broader, biodiversity and wildlife on the planet as a whole? Are you thinking we're starting to see recovery? We're starting to see some positive trends, or are you gravely concerned about, how it's going to pan out, and it might pan out very badly?
I think we will see changes to distribution of stocks. I think we're already seeing it with like the increase in the number of John Dory we see in the summer, range extension of things like undulate ray around here, a species that is associated with warmer water, the retreat of some of our colder water species. That seems to be a pattern. I'm not going to go into the complexities of global warming and that sort of thing, so I know there'll be some, but yeah, I would say we're seeing a pattern there. As for, I think some species of shark, as I said before, I think there are some species of shark we're just going to wipe out, unfortunately.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think there are some species that are so threatened now, it's very hard to see there's enough genetic diversity left. I wouldn't put mako quite into that category, but I would say that they may need to have action immediately to protect them.
Mm-hmm. And it's what sharks would you put into that category?
Sorry?
What sharks would you put into that category?
Mako is the one I would put. Things like, I'm trying to think what sharks I would put into that category would be, some of the hammerhead species threatened. I think there are some of the rarer sharks that you're just gonna just disappear. I think I think
those deep water sharks, the cookie cutters and others.
Yeah, and I put mako into the category of I'm really concerned. They are a high value meat. They're not just a fin product. They're slow growing. They don't pup that often. They don't produce many pups. You need to really have a very strict policy on commercial fishing for them. Poor beagles, I'm cautiously optimistic, I would say. I would say that from a state where I was very worried about the stock, I think there's some really good signs of recovery. But just because of the long generation times, I wouldn't be celebrating yet. Blue sharks, maybe they're a beneficiary. If you take something out of the system, maybe blue sharks do really, really well. I think I'm not concerned about blue sharks at the moment to any same extent. I think it's complicated. I think there are economic concerns as well. I think, fortunately for blue sharks, their meat is absolute shit. I think, something that you've got to put into a freezer to get rid of the ammonia for 2 weeks, to me is not edible. Unfortunately, they got big fins. I think if we have strict anti-finning policies, it needs to be coordinated in the North Atlantic. I count them. It needs to be, but I'm optimistic for blue shark populations. I think they're doing very well. I suspect there is evidence we're already seeing other species of sharks in UK waters. Sawtooth sand tiger sharks are getting close. Things like that. I would say we will see a retreat of many of the species that are at the southern extent of their range, and a northern extension of some other species. So the thing is, as you know what ecosystems are like. You take one little part and you affect another little part. So it'll reset itself at some equilibrium. Whether that will be favourable to us, I don't know. It's unpredictable. It's massively complicated. I'm not completely negative about it. I'd say I'm not one of these complete doom merchants. I think we've shown through poor beagles and to some extent blue sharks, we can make a difference. The bluefin tuna, we can make a difference. It's not too late. If we actually take this seriously, and I do think that painting a completely negative picture of everything is just, it's almost like it's a sense of despair. I think every one of us can make a difference. And, I strongly believe that anglers can make a massive difference for good. I fish because I love fishing. I've fished since I was a baby. I do it. I work with sharks because I think I can make a difference. And I'm very lucky to work with some fantastic other people. And, the skippers and the clubs I work with have entrusted me with this. I do think I think the Irish program is a brilliant example. I mean, you lads, through that program, you made a difference. You allowed them to do a proper stock assessment. They actually preferred your data to all the others, which was an inspiration for what we do. You can't. I mean, that would be my message. Don't give up on it. Don't say there isn't a problem, but don't say you can't cure it. I think we can play a massive part in doing that.
Simon, that's a fantastic message. Thank you very much for that. If people want to get in touch with you or maybe with other organizations, where they can go, what shout outs would you like to give?
I would say the Shark Angling Club of Great Britain are always a good site to look at. The Sports Fishing Club of the British Isles would be the other one. I'm the honorary biologist for both. Their websites have a lot of information. If people want to contact me personally, they can have my email if you want to give it out to them and that sort of thing.
So maybe I wouldn't go just that far because you might get a lot of spam. But
but through Facebook or whatever, that sort of thing. I'm more than happy to talk fish with people, and that's it's always good, isn't it? Just to sit down and natter about something. It's a shame we can't do it in person at the moment, but yeah.
I know. Maybe once the travel restrictions are lifted, then we can meet in person. I'm having plans to do like big trips and meet with various people face to face. So maybe we'll let's stay in touch. So Simon, thank you a lot for that. It was great, tons of knowledge, greatly inspirational, and thank you for your message.
Thank you, Tommy, for giving me the chance, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we'll get out fishing sometime together.
Absolutely. See ya.
Take care.